like to talk about a subject today that really can change the appearance and give you some uniqueness for your aircraft that a lot of guys may not be aware of or know how easy it is to accomplish this. What I'm referencing is the fact that in the last few years, and I know for sure at least in 5 years plus, we have just had a huge increase in the percentage of ARFs and RTFs, or almost ready to flies and ready to fly aircraft, that have come out on the market. That's absolutely great, because if you want to fly, you don't spend your time in the shop hours after hours after hours building the aircraft. And the truth of the matter is, in my opinion, at least I'll speak for myself, the average guy today isn't going to build as nice a quality as is coming out of the factories. But the point I wanted to get to is everybody likes to have their particular vehicle, in this case the model, be unique. What I have in front of me here are some examples of the paints and tools that are available today, and there has been a tremendous change in the technology in the painting industry that allows us to get away from saying, geez, to do a nice paint job like we see here is a 2-week ordeal. Those days are gone. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail for you later in the segment and talk about actually shooting the products with an airbrush, if you choose to buy that, and bottled paint where you're mixing it with a reducer. But let's start with the easier approach that at least is a nice starting point for you to give it a shot if you've never done anything in customizing or painting. Let me state first of all that these applications will work on any aircraft. I just happen to have 2 helicopter canopies in front here because they're small enough and easy to move around for the conversation today. But you note here that I've got a fixed wing behind us, and this happens to be a ARF. It comes painted with the scheme that you see. So it's very representative of what we're talking about today. What I'd like to do is give you some examples here and then actually go into a little bit of detail on how you can customize your aircraft, and it's much easier than you would think. I've got a couple canopies here today that show us an example of literally a factory gel coat finish. This is the white one that comes that way right out of the box. The black is a painted on color, and then an example of a full-blown custom paint job over here on identical canopy, where this is shot with the urethane enamels that I'm going to go into in a little bit, and then has a urethane clear coat over it, and this is considered the ultimate in the painting industry. So let me start with just an overview for you of what's changed in terms of the materials side. I can tell you that not very many years ago, literally to do a nice paint job, if you were working at it every night when you got home from your job, you'd have at least a week, and in many cases 2. And the reason for that was that you, first of all, had to fill and do a significant amount of pre-painting surface preparation. And that was nothing more than filling pinholes, getting rid of any kind of inconsistency or mars that came on the piece itself, whether it was the fuselage, the wing, a canopy, etc. Well, one of the upsides with the ARFs and the ready-to-flies is that in order to have an acceptable-looking product, the factories are putting out the examples of their aircraft where that pre-painting finish work is done. So that's a huge time saver for you as the individual. With that in mind, and these are 2 examples of it, and I'll show you some other aircraft later, some fixed-wing aircraft, you basically have a piece that's ready to start with the exception of making sure that it's clean. But back to the material side of it. As I mentioned, the old days, and we're talking 5 years plus, you'd shoot a color, you'd have to let it dry at least 24 to 48 hours, and that was assuming you had good drying conditions, warm, not humid, etc., and then you could go ahead and mask and do your next color, and then you had to let that dry for 24 to 48 hours, etc. Well, what's changed now, that's a huge change, is that the paints that are out that are called the urethane enamels are very similar to the old days of shooting lacquer, where the paint would dry in 2 to 3 minutes. But the difference is the lacquers weren't actually dry to be worked with in 2 to 3 minutes. They would dry to at least a light touch and to the naked eye, but they weren't ready to work with. The new urethane enamels will literally dry to the touch in 3 minutes, and under good drying conditions, the piece can be masked for the next color in as short a time as 5 minutes. So that's an absolute night and day difference. So we've gone from a 2-day turnaround time to shoot a color to 5 minutes. You can see the point there. The other thing that's very nice is that because the urethane enamels dry so quickly, you don't have to be an expert to apply them onto the piece itself. In the old days, if you were shooting with, say, an Imran, or you were shooting with any kind of pure oil-based paints, if you weren't really a skilled painter, it was so easy to get a run that would ruin your project. It wasn't funny. Now, with the drying times being as short as they are with the urethane enamels, I won't say you can't get them to run, but it's darn tough. As quick as you can move your hand, it's virtually dry behind it. So that takes care of that problem. So let me move on and say, let's address the issue that you say, well, okay, you know what, I've got an ARF, I've got it ready to fly. I really don't want to go buy an airbrush and mix paint up. I'm not quite ready to take on that step yet. No problem. The paints that I'm talking about are available in an aerosol spray style. You can see here the one example of a fuel proof where you'd be using it with a glow or gas model. Here's an example of an enamel, which is not fuel proof, but will work just fine on an electric bird, or works just fine if you shoot a clear coat over it, a urethane clear. So getting into a little bit of detail, what I brought today is an example literally out of the box of a factory canopy, and I already mentioned that this comes with a pre-coated finish on it. This is actually a gel coat here. This part isn't paint. This is not paint. But it's a gel coat finish here, and they've actually shot black over that. So this bird, I left the decals on deliberately to show you that it certainly is a nice vibrant color, and it will give you visibility in the air. But one of the downsides, besides the fact that you have no uniqueness of decals, is that no matter how careful you apply them, and these were absolutely perfect, believe me, when we put them on, you end up getting over some period of time, very likely, wrinkling and a little bit of lifting where air bubbles get underneath. Now, that doesn't affect the flight of your aircraft, but all of us like the aircraft to look great, so you're not happy with that. So taking this piece, what we would do quite simply, and I'm not going to do the actual painting here for this demonstration, but I just want to run through the steps so that you know what they are and show you the materials involved. All we would do, and these will normally come off without any heat applied, but if you need it, you can take a hair dryer, or you can even take a little hotter gun than that, but a hair dryer works just fine. Run it slowly over the decal, and at that point you can just peel the decal right off. If you happen to have any adhesive left, all you have to do is get rubbing alcohol on a nice soft cloth, and let me reiterate, you want to use a soft cloth. Try not to use paper, because what will happen is, particularly when you're painting, is if you use a paper-based product other than microfiber, which you can get at automotive stores and Walmart and so on, the paper, believe it or not, in a paper towel is actually aggressive enough, it's abrasive enough, that you'll leave swirl marks in the finish. And if you really want a great job like you see here, believe me, when you turn it in the light, you'll see that. So use a cloth. You can get, I think, a pack of them for $5 at Walmart for probably a half a dozen of the microfibers, and they're great. Clean it off carefully with any adhesive that's left on there. Now you're ready to go ahead and paint. To do that, you have to decide what kind of a finish you're going to do. My recommendation, if you've never shot before, is do a very simple finish, and by that I mean I would probably take at most a V, whatever you like. It's obviously a personal choice, but a V-type color where you've got maybe two colors. The first color is the base. The second color is whatever you want as a contrasting color. My recommendation there is, and you guys probably know this if you're already flying, if you don't, I want to mention it, get the brightest colors you can get and always get a good contrast. And that's a visibility issue when you're flying the bird. So now we've got it ready to mask over it. There are a couple different points I want to make there. While you can get the microfiber cleaning towels at Walmart, and they're the same as the automotive shops are going to sell, they're very good quality, you don't normally want to go buy the masking tape unless they have a known brand like 3M or a like at just a typical general store like a Walmart. What I have in my hand here is Pactra, and they happen to be one of the manufacturers that have been around for a long time in paints, actually specialized in the modeling industry. This is an example of one of the firms. They own Testors. The Pactra line owns the Testors paint line. But the reason I mention it is this is considered very high quality detail masking tape. The difference is very simple to regular grade masking tape. It's much thinner, the adhesive is very carefully applied and very evenly right out to the edge of the tape, and when you mask, you won't get what we call bleed underneath the colors. You get pure, clean color separation. So make sure you buy a good quality tape. You can get that at your hobby shops. You can get any good masking tape, by the way, at a good automotive color supply store. So if your hobby shop happens to be closed or you go buy one on the way to work, that's not a problem. But the key point is make sure that you get a masking tape that won't bleed. Once you've got that, and again, I'm not going to go through the full paint job here, we're now ready to go ahead and actually apply our tape onto the bird. Now, I'm just doing this for time's sake. I'm just going to put a piece on here. Obviously, this isn't the real paint job. And then I want to make a couple other points. You mask off where your color is going to be, and I'm doing this quickly for this how-to, but you want it smooth, obviously. You don't want any wrinkles. Another key is to make sure that you run your finger very carefully down both edges of the tape. Even though you're using a good quality masking tape, that stops it from bleeding underneath. Now, another tip. Even with these quick-drying paints, with the urethane enamels, as fast as they dry, which is in a matter of 2 or 3 minutes, you still want to always shoot your light colors first and your darker colors afterwards. And the reason is for coverage. So let's just say that in this case, and we know that this canopy came with the color already shot on the windshield area, so you don't have to do anything there. It's got a beautiful base coat. There was absolutely no filling required here. But you decided, look, I'm going to do a combination of yellow and I'm going to do orange for my other contrasting trim color. Yellow lighter than orange, shoot the yellow first. Mask off, shoot that one first. It'll dry very quickly, whether you're using it out of a can or whether you're shooting it with a gun. Now you're ready to go ahead and mask for your second color. Point is, do the darker color as your ladder. There's an issue there where, believe it or not, even with the good tapes, you'll get some really funny-looking things that happen if you try to shoot the lighter color over the dark. Bottom line is you basically won't get the coverage. You won't get a good level of coverage. So we've got it masked off. We've shot our color. We've pulled the tape back off. Now, in the example of a two-color trim job, we've shot the second one on. At that point, we can actually stop. If we're using a couple different brands of the canned paints, many of those will come with a little bit of a satin or a gloss already mixed into the paint. So you won't have to do anything else in clear. However, if you're using any of the major automotive brands, examples would be PPG, Vibrance, the DuPont, Chroma Base. These are brand names that are available today that I would recommend you use if you decide you want to actually shoot with a gun. And House of Color is another example, and that's color with a K, K-O-L-O-R, that are all excellent brand paints. They really are a line that the manufacturers have come up with that are for specialty custom applications, the motorcycle industry, custom automotive guys, that sort of thing. But the point is, those are all name brand paints, and the paints, because they dry so quickly that you would shoot through the guns, are what we call a flat finish. And that simply means you won't have this gloss. It will be a beautiful finish, very smooth, no irregularities, but it doesn't have any gloss to it, and that's by design. So they absolutely require that you shoot clear over it. In the case of our canned paint job example, not using an airbrush, here's an example of what's called Crystal Clear. It's a luster coat product from Top Flight. This paint is actually fuel proof, so it can be used on a gas or an electric powered model. And the reason I reference it is, assuming that you don't want to use an air gun and that sort of thing, even though you may have a finish that you're happy with, it's not a bad idea to shoot a last coat or two over it with clear, because it fills in any kind of a ridge that you'll have between the paint lines where you've put on the masking tape and done the two-color paint and so on. There are a variety of different brands out, so this is a great one. The luster coat line is a good one from Top Flight, but I don't want to so much get into the brand as saying these are available in a paint can, a spray bomb, where you don't have to mess with an airbrush. Same thing holds true, and I mentioned this a bit earlier in terms of the colors. The colors are obviously available in a spray bomb as well, in a spray can, and you don't have to mess at all with mixing and getting an airbrush. Let me go to finish up the segment back into what's available commercially. A couple more hints that I'd like to bring up to you. Let's assume that you've done a couple paint jobs, maybe you've used spray cans, and you really want to give a go at trying something that's a little more sophisticated to really set your aircraft off and make it unique. Whatever brand you use, whether it's DuPont or the PPG or the House of Color, those are normally going to be available from an automotive supply. I'd like to make sure you're aware of this fact. If you just walk in off the street to an automotive supply, not all of them will have either the PPG or the DuPont available in a smaller quantity. When I say a smaller quantity, I'm talking about colors that are about 2 to 4 ounces. They'll normally have cans that are about a pint to a quart in size, and that doesn't include the reducer. and it's a 2-to-1 ratio there. There's paint at 2 parts, and then the reducer, which is basically an accelerant as well as a reducer, of 1 part. So a 2-to-1 mix. So you're going to leave there, let's say you're doing our 2-paint job example, you would leave with 2 colors of paint plus a can of reducer plus your clear. Going to get pretty expensive because these are very nice paints. The good news is, and I believe that PPG and DuPont are now following suit, House of Color, and you can Google them on the web, it's K-O-L-O-R, House of Color, has now packaged small quantities aimed at the modeling market or the guys that are doing really intricate small designs on motorcycle gas tanks, that kind of thing. But the point is you can buy a very small quantity of 3 colors and get it for a reasonable price. We've shot it. Let's jump forward to that point. You're happy with the color. I want to make another point clear with the urethane enamels. They are not sandable colors. Another major change from the old days. In the old days, if you shot a color on that wasn't the quick dry, it was no problem to use wet sandpaper. You could start from a grit grade of 600, go all the way up to, say, a 2000, and wet sand the color, and then shoot and get a beautiful paint job. You do not sand the urethane enamels today. They dry so quickly they're not designed to do that. What that means in layman's terms is the undercoat surface, and I said this before but I want to reiterate it, must be perfect. If what you're shooting the color over, if you're not happy with the way it looks when you turn it in the light, it isn't going to look any better. You cannot sand that out. Any irregularity is going to show up. Just a point I want to make. So we're happy with the color now. We know that we've got to put clear over it. That's our last step. I recommend that you get a urethane clear. I'm going to say that most states still allow a 2-to-1 mix ratio for the urethane clears. A few states like California, for EPA regulations, have now gone to a 4-to-1. But the point making is that the lower the ratio, 2-to-1, lower than 3-to-1, lower than 4-to-1, etc., is a much thicker, heavier coat. You will get a beautiful, glossy depth finish with it. I don't think there's any problem in most of the states still getting 2-to-1. But anyway, try to find a 2-to-1 ratio if you're going to shoot the clear. Once you've shot the clear on, the clear, keep in mind, does not dry as quickly as the urethane enamels. You don't have a couple days drying, but you really want to let it dry well overnight. And that can be sanded. So I recommend if you've got any runs, and it is much easier to get runs with the clear, do a light sand out with 600 grade paper wet, ultimately get down to a 2000 grade paper, and then you can go to your local Advanced Autos or AutoZones or Walmarts or wherever, or the automotive color supply, and buy a 3M or a Meguiar's product where they're basically a polishing compound. Meguiar's has a beautiful line of polishing compounds, and once you've wet sanded it, you take that, you put it on a microfiber towel, and you rub it out. It takes a little bit of elbow grease, but you will get an absolutely beautiful finish. So in summary, what I hope you'll do is leave this segment with maybe a little bit of excitement and say, you know what, I don't have to have a look-alike canopy or aircraft in total to the next guy. Hope it helps you.